Hello, everyone. My name is Shep Wilben. I am the Program Associate for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, or AHSC. There are additional Strategic Growth Council staff on the webinar helping. Going down the line, can Coral, Ina, and Ryan, if you'd like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Coral Abbott. I work on the Community Assistance for Climate Equity team here at SGC and used to work on the AHSC program, so just playing a supporting role today.
Hi everyone, I'm Ina Lupin. I'm the Community Assistance Program Manager at the Strategic Growth Council and manage a number of technical assistance contracts. So I'll be working a bit on this one and we'll be presenting a little bit later on in the webinar.
Hi everyone, this is Ryan Silber. I am the Program Manager for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you all for joining this webinar to learn more about the California Strategic Growth Council's request for proposals for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Technical Assistance Program. Before we get started, I just want to say that I hope everyone is doing well. I want to recognize that so many people are going through adjustments, worries, and difficulties during this period. I really want to thank you all for taking the time to join us and for your interest in the program. We will be recording this webinar and sharing the recording publicly. If you have questions during the webinar, please post them in the chat box. This makes it easier for us to respond and transcribe the answers. Additionally, could you also introduce yourselves in the chat box and leave some of your contact information so that we can help organize and get back to you.
And just a note there that that's totally optional if folks want to provide that. We can send around a roster after the fact if folks are trying to kind of coordinate and network to create a team for a proposal.
Okay, so, all right, next slide. The goal of the presentation is essentially to walk through parts of the RFP and answer questions that folks might have. We have approximately an hour scheduled for the webinar, and we would like to leave time at the end for questions. Pause for a quick second to let you all look over the agenda. Next slide. The Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program is a California climate investment program funded through cap and trade revenue. As a result, the program is designed to encourage the development of infill affordable housing and sustainable transportation, to produce healthier communities and protect the environment through the reduction of greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. Next slide. Here's a quick outline of some of the program's major accomplishments. Since 2015, AHSC has funded 104 projects across the state with over $1.1 billion in investments. The result has been 8,932 affordable units, 2.2 million metric tons of CO2 emissions avoided, 81 projects benefiting disadvantaged communities, and the removal of the equivalent of over 11,750 automobiles off the road, reducing vehicle miles traveled by 134 million miles. Next slide. This graphic just serves to illustrate the type of sustainable community the program aims to encourage. If you hit it again, it might some bubbles up. Each bubble contains a potential project component that AHSC funds. Next slide. To make sure that AHSC is funding sustainable projects in the full range of diverse communities across the state, the program uses 3 different project area types to account for differences in local context. Each of those area types is dedicated as a dedicated percentage of the total funding amount per round. Transit-oriented development, or TOD, is the densest area type, and it has a requirement for high-quality transit. It's allotted 35% of the total. Integrated connectivity projects, or ICP, represent a more suburban area type, but it fields applications from a wide variety of local environments. As a result, it has a 45% set aside for projects in this category. Rural Innovation Project Areas, or RIPAs, covers rural area types, and it receives 10% set aside. The last 10% falls under the category of discretionary. Also important to note is the 50% set aside for disadvantaged communities, or DACs, which is a statutory requirement for the program. Next slide, please. Next slide. This graphic offers a basic overview of the application process, showing the progression from the release of the application in NOFA to the selection of the awardees. It should be noted that this is only a snapshot of application-related activities. TA providers, of course, work with potential applicants in the pre-application phase and may be called upon to assist with appeals later after submission. But the work of TA providers will follow a larger cycle that we will touch on later in the presentation. Next slide, please. While eligibility requirements for the program involve more than just these, highlighted here are some of the most basic categories for eligibility. Eligible capital projects outlines the principal project components that are funded through AHSC. The affordable housing development, housing-related infrastructure, if it is required as a condition to approve the affordable housing, sustainable infrastructure, and transit-related amenities. Most eligible programs are transportation or education-related. They are often used to complement the project's capital projects. On the other side is a list of eligible applicants. Those underlined are the most frequently seen in proposals. And below that are the eligible project types that we touched on earlier. Next slide, please. Threshold for AHSC is a set of 25 basic requirements that must be met for any project to be considered for competitive scoring. Some noteworthy thresholds include verification of GHG reductions, the distance between the affordable housing development and the location of transit, whether the project is shovel-ready, being able to demonstrate site control, developer experience, committed funding, and the affordability of the project's units, among other things. Next slide, please. The scoring criteria for the program has 3 different categories, which add up to a total of 100 points. 30 points for GHG reductions, which is scored using the calculator tool. Scores are ranked, separated by the project area type, and then placed into bins to allocate points relative to other projects in their project area type. There are 55 points available through the quantitative policy section. It is not counted as automatic points. It is self-scored by applicants, reviewed by AHSC staff, and there's a chance for appeal. The narrative scoring section is worth 15 points. The narrative allows for applicants to showcase important aspects of their project. These scoring categories are intended to flesh out the process, collaboration, and vision behind how planning, feedback, data, and materials are considered and integrated into projects in a thoughtful way. Next slide, please.
Hey, Shep, we just got a note here that someone's having a little bit difficulty hearing you. So just if anything you can do to avoid background noise might be helpful.
Oh, of course. Is that good? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, let's keep proceeding.
Okay. The project area map is the primary reference document for what is in the project area and how close project elements are to each other. If it requires verification of a spatial relationship, for instance, housing development to transit, housing development to destinations, etc., it should be shown here. As such, mapping is an important skill for the contractor team to understand and be capable with as an aspect of their application development services. Next slide, please.
Sorry, it's frozen. Trying to get it to work.
Oh, I can just say the other part. It's important for the contractor team to have experience with GHG calculations, as it accounts for up to 30% of the overall scoring. The contractor team should be able to help applicants understand what data is needed, help them enter information into the benefits calculator, and ensure that the applicant provides all requested supporting documents. Next slide. This is just a quick overview of the timeline for the contract. Next slide, please. The primary goal of the AHSC Technical Assistance Program is to provide application assistance, partnership development, and capacity building activities to eligible applicants, supporting projects that can serve the diverse range of California communities regardless of their capacity. Next slide, please. The tentative total maximum of applicants to be served by direct application assistance based regional allocation goals is 39. The overall total maximum recipients per funding round, however, is 42, which accounts for up to 3 tribal applicants. It should be noted that the regional figures for tentative maxes are goals. The idea being that AHSC will support every region of the state by holding TA capacity available for viable projects. In any given round, there is no guarantee that each region will be able to put forth the max number. Proposers should demonstrate experience working in each of the 7 regions identified here. Next slide, please. Ensuring the underserved communities of California have the capacity to put forth competitive applications is a primary concern of the TA program. The underserved communities outlined here should receive special consideration for technical assistance, and the proposer should have experience working with these communities or have someone on their contractor team that does. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Jeff, is it showing the scope overview page now?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
This sample TA cycle is not meant to be definitive, just to help offer an idea of how the scope would play out in relationship with the context of the larger AHSC program. As you can see, the contract would start in August, and it would continue. It would start administrative work in August as well, but it would continue task 2, providing the direct application assistance to potential applicants. That would continue until the end of the 6th round in February. After that, task 1 would resume for round 7. And then March and April, capacity building, task 3 would start. And that would continue all the way until August. Meanwhile, task 4 would begin in April, and that would go until beyond the horizon of the sample. And yeah, no, that's just a general example of what the cycle would look like, including the different tasks. Next slide, please. Task 1, administrative coordination and reporting, would center around the creation of the work plan for the contractor team. That is primarily what would occur during 1.1, and 1.2 and 1.3 would work as updates for the original work plan. Next slide, please. The kickoff meeting initiates each new technical assistance cycle, offering the opportunity to set reporting expectations, to clarify roles. The contracting team collaborates with the Strategic Growth Council to outline the work plan and timeline for the new TA cycle. Next slide, please. Project administration and updates. This subtask offers the opportunity to schedule regular updates on the work plan, communicate on an ongoing basis, and establish a schedule to manage the overall workflow. Next slide, please. Project evaluation, quarterly reports, and final reports. This subtask offers an opportunity for the contractor to report back on findings and progress in terms of moving forward on the original work plan. At the end of each cycle, the contractor provides a final report offering an evaluation of the technical assistance provided throughout the cycle. Next slide, please. Task 2 and 4, both direct application assistance, but for rounds 6 and 7. The contractor will engage in direct application assistance for 2 cycles. The direct application assistance is comprised of 2 subtasks. For subtask 1, the contractor will assist SGC in the evaluation and selection of potential AHSC applicants to receive the direct application assistance. For subtask 2, the contractor works with each of the TA recipients selected in the previous subtask to then develop a work plan for submitting their AHSC application. They support the recipient in their application development efforts outlined in this work plan. Next slide, please. For subtasks 2.1 and 4.1, the contractor will provide feedback and assistance with data evaluation as SGC leads the survey process for potential applicants. The contractor will additionally assist SGC in the determination of resource distribution to meet the TA need. The Strategic Growth Council will ultimately select the TA recipients. Next slide, please. During subtask 2.2 and 4.2, the contractor will work with the selected TA recipients to identify their specific technical assistance needs for the application, to develop an individualized work plan and proposed schedule of delivery of assistance. Next slide, please. Like technical assistance, the capacity building covers 2 tasks, a task for both round 7 and 8. The capacity building phases, task 3 and 5, placing emphasis on building institutional capacity to apply for HSC. Starting with the subtask of developing a work plan, then moving to subtask 2, carries out the activities outlined in the work plan. Subtask 3 aims to develop complementary materials to support the activities carried out in subtask 2 or fill any gaps in general knowledge left over. Next slide, please. For task 3.1 and 5.1, together with SGC, the contractor will develop a work plan identifying key areas, activities, and resource needs to focus capacity building efforts. Disadvantaged, low income, and tribal communities should be the primary focus for capacity building activities. Also, SGC aims to facilitate activities that can build off related programs like SGC's Boost program or other CCI programs that involve technical assistance or planning efforts. Next slide, please. The goal of subtask 3.2 and 5.2 is to offer a variety of activities that can provide the knowledge and connections necessary for participants to develop the capacity to competitively apply. Presentations, in person and digital, help to build the general base of knowledge on certain aspects of AHSC, while activities like consultations, networking, and convenings help to bring together more specific aspects of the potential applicant's project. Next slide, please. Based on the information gathered in previous subtasks, the contractor will create resources that can help possible applicants with aspects of project development or the application process. The deliverables mentioned here are essentially examples, as the materials developed should reflect the needs of each cycle and the feedback received in previous subtasks. Next slide, please. And I will now hand it off to Ina to run through the bidder's response package.
Great, thank you, Shep. Hi, everyone. I think we can move to the next slide. I'm just going to walk us through a little bit what we'll be asking for from you all as a part of this RFP. So just starting off the RFP or contracting timeline, some of the ones in bold are particularly important to pay attention to. The written question submittal deadline is Friday the 26th, which is today. I will just say, I'm sorry, no, it's not today, it's in June. So 1 month from today. But I think one thing to keep in mind is that we will do our best to respond to questions after that date, but can't promise that we will have time to do so. So whatever you can do to get in your questions in advance would be great. And it may have already been mentioned, but we will also be sort of compiling all of the questions that come together from this webinar into a Q&A document that we'll be posting. So the deadline for this RFP is Friday, July 17th at 5 p.m. One thing to note is that we cannot accept any late proposals. You know, we know in particular with COVID, it can sometimes be challenging to pull things together in time, but unfortunately we're legally constrained, and so that's something to be super careful of. Even if something comes in 1 minute after the deadline, we are unfortunately unable to accept it. So please do pay attention to that. The other thing I wanted to note, we'll be posting the intent to award on the 27th, and then we send once the protest period has passed, then we will send the contract over to DGS. And currently, DGS is taking a little bit more time than they usually do. So if any of you have contracted with us in the past, normally it's 10 business days, and during this time, it looks like it's going to be around 20 business days. So we're hoping to be able to start on August 25th, but again, this is kind of you know, that's an approximate date. So I think we can go to the next slide, please. Great. So this is just the main organization for your proposal. I think much of this is pretty straightforward, and it is laid out in the RFP. I'm just going to go through a couple pieces of this, I think, on the next slide. Oh, maybe it's later, but anyway, I can just, so response to scope of work. Was that the slide? Well, I'll do this one. So for the response to scope of work, we're looking for an overview summary, the project management plan, which should include your management structure, including your subs, methodology and approach. We're really looking here for specific techniques and methodologies, really to better understand, you know, what approach you would bring to technical assistance. The work plan and schedule, including all tasks, milestones, deliverables, estimated hours for each task, as well as supervision and task management. And then also a description of each one of the subs and what their role will be. So we can go to the next slide. It looks like maybe we did actually, I'm sorry, skip the experience slide. Maybe we should go back to that. Apologies. Okay, cool, thank you. So just to go over really quickly, this is also included in the RFP, but we have this is the threshold essentially. So make sure that there are folks on your team who have this experience, and make sure that within your proposal, you're able to provide examples and to explain how your team meets these requirements. Great, thanks. Apologies for the slide mix up. Now if we can go to the, this one, perfect. Oh, I think qualifications, great. So qualifications, we just need a proof of those minimum qualifications that I mentioned earlier. We're also looking for personnel team resumes, and then 3 reference forms. Much of this is pretty standard if any of you have done contracts with us in the past, but I think it is helpful to note. We can go to the next slide. The budget. So you all will have to put together a budget using attachment 13 of the RFP. If you don't want to use that sheet, it's not required, but I think it is helpful, and you can feel free to also modify it to your needs as much as possible. So, you know, you want to be sure here that you're clear on the identification of positions and classification titles, and really try to avoid listing names, salary ranges, or fringe benefits. A note here that rates that you submit are capped and can't change. So do keep an eye on that. Percentage of time devoted to the work, operating expenses, travel and per diem expenses. Just a note here that we do have requirements around the cost for travel and per diem expenses. So it is something to look at, and it's on CalHR's website. Overhead or indirect costs, we have a cap of 20% for indirect costs on this RFP. And then information also for the subs in your budget. We can go to the next slide. Great. So this is the list of all of the attachments that will need to be included with your proposal. I mentioned attachment 13 already, but the one that I actually want to highlight most here is the bidder declaration, attachment 8. This one is critically important, and again is one of those things that unfortunately if that sheet is not included in the proposal, we aren't able to accept it. So please do pay super close attention to make sure that that piece is included in your proposal. Again, that's just a legal constraint that we have at SGC. And then if we could go, great. So just a little bit on evaluation now. We can go to the next slide. So the administrative evaluation is really just a sort of pass-fail. It goes through our contracts team just to make sure that it's complete. So we will be taking into account whether or not the proposal came on time, and if it has that bidder's declaration as a part of it, as well as the minimum qualification thresholds. And then just a point here that we may ask for additional clarification or documentation at that time. You can go to the next slide. Great, perfect. So then at this point, that's when the proposals will go through a technical evaluation, really looking at the points that are outlined here. So for the approach to scope of work, we have 40 points. This is broken down into 3 separate points. One is on the project management plan, and ensuring that this names a qualified project manager. Also looking at the methodology and approach, which counts for 20 points of the overall 40. And then proposers' knowledge and experience of TA needed to address the AHSC program, which is another 10 points as well. You can go to the next slide. Great. And so then we also have 10 points for clarity and organization of the proposal, 25 points for the work plan and schedule. This includes the schedule of activities and sort of the effectiveness of your approach, estimated dates of completion, etc. We can go to the next slide. Great. And then just wrapping up this scoring information, we have 25 points for proposer and team experience. And so here there are 5 points for each one of these different criteria, looking at whether or not the proposer has a track record of successfully providing TA, developing proposals and grants. One that's looking at specific expertise in data analysis of GHG emissions. Another one around experience with affordable housing finance and development, transportation and transit finance and planning, land use planning, infrastructure planning and development, and other programmatic aspects of AHSC and other CCI programs. Then we also have 5 points for experience coordinating a number of different organizations in the public, private, and nonprofit sector, as well as experience working with disadvantaged and low-income communities, with a special mention here as well for experience working with tribal communities. You can go to the next slide. And then we do have as well a cost evaluation. So this is for a maximum of 50 points. And there's more information about this in the bid, so I won't go into detail so we have time for questions. But if you do look at the RFP, you'll be able to find all of this information. Next slide, please. Great. And then we do have extra points for disabled veteran business enterprises and small businesses as well, which is on the next slide. So this information is laid out here around how that is calculated. I, again, won't go into very much detail on that, but great, we can, thanks, go to the next slide. And so this next slide is on small businesses, micro businesses as well. One note is that it's important to make sure that you are formally certified with the Department of General Services in order to receive that preference. We unfortunately can't give the extra points to anyone who isn't certified. But again, look into the RFP and let us know if you have any specific questions around that piece. Then I think with that, we can open it up for questions.